Yes.
So on the issue of not complying with subpoenas, Robert, my understanding, if we're shifting it to Maricopa County, but it's another subpoena issue. Apparently, from what I understand, neither the county nor Dominion are respecting the subpoenas that were issued by the GOP Senate. Is that the right way of saying it?
Or the state Senate, the state legislature, the state Senate of Arizona.
So what's the context of that audit right now? What are they looking for with those subpoenas? What's the basis for not complying with them? And what's the sanction potentially for not complying with them?
So some of the election details I'll only be discussing at vivabarneslaw.locals.com because YouTube will freak out if we talk about certain information. After all, one of the state Senate hearings that concerned the information leading to the subpoena request was removed by YouTube. That's how insane this is getting.
What was it removed for? What was it removed for? Was it removed for the basis of violating their new 2020 rule that you cannot question certain things, or was that the rationale?
Well, it was a classic YouTube removal, which Allison Morrow can attest to, which Eric Hunley can attest to, which is you violated something, and we'll let you know in the future what it was.
Okay, so we have to limit the discussion, and anybody who wants more complete discussion, Robert has been doing amazing. What is it? What are you calling it now? It's bourbon with rum or bourbon? I forget which.
Bourbon with Barnes. Doing those Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And also throughout the week, I'm going to be doing further breakdowns on the factual aspects of these election cases, as well as the what medical evidence is in controversy in the vaccine cases. We're not going to discuss that here because that too, for example, big tech has been taking down people's posts for quoting the CDC, saying it's misinformation, because the fact sheets in the CDC say something very different about the vaccines than employers and government people are telling their employees right now. So, but rather than risk, anything with YouTube, all of that I'll be breaking down. There's a North Carolina suit, a California suit, a Tennessee suit, an Indiana Supreme Court petition. All of that we'll be discussing in the medical part, the factual details at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The legal stuff we'll discuss here.
Okay. So what are they? I know what they're asking for in the subpoena, but for those who may not be up to date with it, what are they asking for in the subpoena? What's the relevance of what they could be asking for? And so help me goodness, what is the rationale for refusing, and what could be the sanction for refusing to comply with the subpoena?
So far, my understanding is the Board of Supervisors of Maricopa County, and they're the ones who have all the election-related information, as well as their contractor vendor, Dominion. And this is where Phoenix is. This is where Maricopa County is. The Arizona State Senate has a Republican majority, and they have issued a range of subpoenas throughout this process in order to conduct a full audit of what took place in the November 2020 election. Throughout this process, my understanding is Maricopa County has tried to refuse pretty much every subpoena that they've been issued, and they've lost in court, to my knowledge, every single time. Mostly what they've bought is time itself. The length it takes to litigate the subpoena buys them a month, 2 months, 3 months before they get the information in order to audit it. After the initial round of all the audit information has been done, they realize there's certain information they still need to complete the audit. Some of that relates to information in Dominion's control, routers, certain IT history to make sure there was no illegal access, to make sure that it wasn't capable of being illegally accessed, all of that in terms of their machines. And then for Maricopa County, a range of materials, including in particular the mail-in ballots that got sent back, which would allow them to do signature match checks against existing signatures. And all of that is what Maricopa County has refused to turn over, and Dominion has refused to turn over. Dominion's excuse has been that this is confidential IP information that endanger them if they turn it over. Maricopa County has a different excuse every other day.
Well, let me stop you on that one. Just on the confidential nature of the information. You have a private company which is granted the government, granted authority or granted by the government certain powers to conduct a public function. How do they then get to claim that the information which they use to conduct this public function is confidential to the point where it cannot be disclosed to the very people for whom they are rendering the service?
Well, that's part of the argument that the state Senate has, that this information was information that would be accessible to Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, so it should be available to them. Their excuse is that somehow will impair their abilities to. Essentially, they're saying this information shouldn't be public and should be limited to the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors rather than the any other political actor or the public at large. I don't understand quite their argument because for the reasons you note, as well as there's ways to make it confidential, that they can do things so that the people who need to do the audit can look at it, but not anybody else look at it.
They can file it under seal. I guess that's the term you have in the States as well. Just file it under seal so that only the parties and the judge involved can see it, and not, hackers or people on the street. I just don't understand. Like there's no cooperation, but there's no sanction for not cooperating.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. I mean, the court hasn't whacked them for this continuous refusal to provide information or documentation. You can contrast it to the election suits, where every little thing, the lawyers are put under microscopic review, even for, in Rudy's case, things he didn't even say in court. And yet here you have Maricopa County or Dominion refusing to honor a legitimately issued subpoena by the state legislature and making them go through the whole judicial process over and over and over again. And even though they lose, they face no consequence for it, and they get time delay. So it's like, why not? It's this two-tiered system of justice people are seeing everywhere that leads to less credibility and confidence in our judicial institutions, frankly. But that's really I think they can only buy time. Most of this will be turned over, and I also think they increase suspicion. If their goal, I get they didn't like the audit, but if their goal was to increase confidence in the election, fighting transparency and hiding information is not a good way to go about it.
Yeah, well, there's no question. And then it only causes people who might believe things that the media wants to prove not true to believe them even more. Yeah. But I cut you off after the first reason as to why they're not communicating it. But I think we might have gone to the second anyhow. The sanctions, in theory, this is in court, right? So they could be held in contempt of court, not just contempt of, I don't know if it's contempt
kind of. Because the subpoenas are issued, the legislature has power to issue subpoenas, but they're not court-issued subpoenas. You can enforce them in court. So that's why there's this two-pronged process allows them to resist in ways so that it's not technically contempt of court until they refuse to obey the court. And they always obey the court once the court affirms the legislative subpoena.
All right, interesting. And as of now, has there been anything of interest that we can discuss here revealed by the Maricopa County audits?
I think it's the factual details. That's what the Senate hearing was about that led to this next round of subpoenas. And that's the Senate hearing that got taken down by YouTube. So that will have to be at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.